I will say I think there's some difference between what Bill Maher did and what, say, Michael Richards did. Michael Richards was being abusive to someone in the audience. He was using that word as a weapon. Bill Maher, I don't think that was his intention. I think what Bill Maher was doing was exercising the kind of profound arrogance of white privilege where he's like, this is a word we're not allowed to use. I'm going to use it anyway. I'm going to be edgy. I'm going to try and do something that I've been told I cannot do. It was a bad choice. I think it speaks to a bigger problem with Bill Maher, but I don't think that he was doing what Michael Richards was doing. Strange to me.
All right, comedian Bill Maher has been on an apology tour ever since he used a racial slur on live television. Outrage broke out on social media with some calling for Maher to be fired after he used the N-word on his HBO show last Friday. Last night, Maher apologized on Real Time with Bill Maher, saying, quote, "I did a bad thing." Maher's show appears on HBO, which is owned by Time Warner, the parent company of CNN. Maher also invited his guests to weigh in on his use of the N-word. Take a listen to actor and rapper Ice Cube's visceral response.
You know, it's a word that has been used against us. It's like a knife, man. And you can use it as a weapon or you can use it as a tool. It's been used as a weapon against us by white people. And we're not gonna let that happen again by nobody. When I hear my homie say it, it don't feel like venom. When I hear a white person say it, it feel like that knife stabbing me, even if they don't mean it. But I think this is a teachable moment, not just to you, but to the people that's watching right now. You know what I'm saying? Dude, I'm not
I think the people watching right now are saying that point has been made.
Not by me.
Okay.
All right, so joining me now is CNN political commentator, Professor Marc Lamont Hill, and CNN media analyst Bill Carter. Good to see you both. Marc, let me start with you now. Is this all good? He's just forgiven?
Well, it's not all good. I think there are a lot of people who will say this was the final straw for them. There are people who have had anxiety about Bill Maher because of his comments on Muslims, because of his comments on immigration, and this is just another strike for them. For other people, this is a whole entire different thing, and they'll just never come back home to him again. But I think the bulk of people say, hey, this was a teachable moment. This was an opportunity for him to do whatever he had to do, and he's moved forward. Now, whether or not the apology is sincere or not, I can't say. I'm not in his head. What I know for sure is that he did something that he rarely does, which is apologize and be humble as he listened to a group of panelists educate him without much pushback.
It's just hard to get past a man of his age that word is even anywhere near the outer edges of his vocabulary. But Bill, Maher changed up the show a bit last night. Instead, putting his guest in the hot seat, he invited sociology professor Michael Eric Dyson to question him about the incident. And Dyson chose to read a text from his son.
This is what he texted me. He said, "I know white boys like that who get a pass, who earn a pass from the work they put in, but the coolest and most honorable white boys are the ones that choose not to act on that pass because they understand the history, pain, and insensitivity behind the use of the N-word." So do you truly understand the need to name and to challenge that unconscious white privilege that exists and how it hurts black people, even if unintentionally?
Yeah, but of course, I think I do. I mean, we're all evolving. We're all who we are.
Right.
By the way, this happened once.
Right.
A guy said a weird thing. I made a bad joke.
Right.
Yes, it was wrong, and I own up to that.
Right.
But, I mean, it's not like I've made a career of this.
Right.
He may not have made a career out of this, but he's certainly, Bill, a provocateur to say the least. His previous show, Politically Incorrect, was canceled after he said something controversial. What do you make of how he handled this controversy?
Well, that is his brand, is to be politically incorrect.
Yeah.
And I think it was interesting to hear him apologize and then say there are no excuses and then make a lot of excuses, saying, well, he's a comedian and he was looking for the joke. And he grew up in New Jersey where there was no racism, which is really bizarre. I grew up, you know, and I knew that from my mother, you don't say things like this. And you said something interesting, Dave. You said, we all know we're on the air. We don't say certain things on the air. Now, I would never say that word on the air, off the air, or anywhere. So it's not in your vocabulary to have it come out. But for him to then dismiss it as a joke that he could have said, for example, in that exact same line, you know, I'm a house slave. He could have tried the same lame joke without using the word. He used the word. It was very provocative, and that's Bill's trade. It's stock and trade, is to be provocative, as you pointed out. I have to say, you know, he thinks it's just something to kind of move on from. But remember, Michael Richards never recovered. He never recovered from an incident like this. It really is sort of a situation where you really, I think if you're going to be sincere about it, you don't make excuses for being a comedian.
I will say I think there is some difference between what Bill Maher did and what, say, Michael Richards did. Michael Richards was being abusive to someone in the audience. He was using that word as a weapon. Bill Maher, I don't think that was his intention. I think what Bill Maher was doing was exercising the kind of profound arrogance of white privilege where he's like, this is a word we're not allowed to use. I'm going to use it anyway. I'm going to be edgy. I'm going to try and do something that I've been told I cannot do. It was a bad choice. I think it speaks to a bigger problem with Bill Maher, but I don't think that he was doing what Michael Richards was doing. I do think, though, to your point, that he did spend much of the time saying, look, I apologize, I was wrong, but I know I shouldn't have said it, but trying to sort of explain away through a subtext that it really wasn't that big of a deal. And it almost felt like he was just going through the stations of the racial cross because he had to, as opposed to because he felt genuinely apologetic.
Sometimes positives come of this, Mark. Was there anything healing about this? Was there a dialogue that began now?
Well, I think, again, sometimes with TV, the goal isn't to persuade the person you're debating right immediately in front of you, right? It's to persuade the audience watching. So we got to get Michael Eric Dyson on TV, this brilliant scholar, explaining race to the people watching. We got to hear Ice Cube talk about the kind of visceral reaction that black people have to this word. We got to have a nuanced, interesting conversation. Well,
he should have known that.
He should have, but sometimes people don't. They either feign ignorance or they actually genuinely don't know. Either way, we had an opportunity to have a conversation that we otherwise would not. And again, let the market decide. Let the viewers decide.
Sure.
Free speech is free speech. Let him say what he wants, but we should decide what it means to us.
And Bill, we let the country decide with Kathy Griffin. She lost numerous jobs, including a co-host gig on this network for posing with that bloody head that looked like President Trump. Maher still has his job for now. How do you compare and contrast the reaction to the offensive word Maher used and what Griffin did?
Well, I think there is a degree, obviously. I think what Kathy did was really extreme. And interestingly, Maher compared it and said, you know, she should send me flowers because I've taken her off the front page. But, you know, I think he made a big mistake. HBO obviously has heard him make sort of mistakes like this before. He seems to be he has attacked Muslims and things like that, and they've sort of shrugged it off. I think his apology will probably work for them, and he won't pay a higher price.
Seems there's so much news going on in this country that he may have been helped just by the news cycle alone, perhaps that created by the president. Marc Lamont Hill, Bill Carter, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right, the prosecution